Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into something absolutely wild, the mind-blowing, real-life biological and psychological superpowers hidden right inside the human body. You know, we often tend to think of human evolution as this thing that happened way back in the distant past, but as we're about to see, our bodies and minds are actually still adapting in these incredibly extreme ways to conquer the harshest environments on Earth.
So, picture this. You're 7 years old, you jump into the ocean, and you open your eyes underwater. But instead of that blurry, foggy mess we're all so used to, you are stunned by the absolute clarity of everything. Every rock, every fish, every tiny little detail is perfectly visible. Literally, like looking through a crystal clear pane of glass. This isn't some comic book superpower. This is just an ordinary Tuesday for the Moken children in the Andaman Sea. These kids essentially learn to swim before they can walk. Deep sea spearfishing without goggles, masks, or really any equipment whatsoever. When scientists actually tested this, the results were just staggering. They dropped tiny objects at the bottom of a deep pool and challenged both Moken kids and European kids to find them. The Moken kids spotted them in the blink of an eye, while the European kids, well, they saw nothing but underwater mirages. Scientifically, water alters light refraction, so our eyes just aren't supposed to work well down there. But the Moken have developed this incredible ability to just defy physics. They involuntarily change the shape of their pupils, contracting them underwater to create a perfectly sharp image. And the craziest part? Scientists found they could actually partially train ordinary kids to do this, meaning this latent superpower is technically sleeping inside all of us. Okay, speaking of diving, what if you could take a single breath, dive 60 meters down into the pitch-black ocean without a wetsuit or oxygen and just hang out there for 13 minutes. And then you just pop back up to the surface, smiling like you took a stroll in the park. Well, this is daily reality for the Bajau people of Asia. They live in wooden houses suspended right over the sea and spend a huge chunk of their lives underwater, effortlessly surviving these crushing depths that would quickly kill even the most seasoned professional scuba divers. It turns out, when scientists examined the Bajau, they discovered their spleens are a massive 50% larger than ours. Now you might be wondering, why does that matter? Well, your spleen acts as a biological reservoir for oxygen-rich red blood cells. So a larger spleen basically means you have a massive built-in oxygen reserve. And here's the truly wild part about this. This is a genetic mutation. Even members of the Bajau tribe who never dive a single day in their lives are born with this dramatically enlarged spleen.
Part 1. Surviving the Extremes, Earth and Air. Alright, so we've seen how the body adapts to the depths of the ocean. But human resilience certainly doesn't stop at the water's edge. Imagine running 160 grueling kilometers in an American ultramarathon. That's brutal enough, right? Now imagine a 67-year-old man entering this exact race and completely crushing young, highly trained professional athletes to take first place, all without even looking out of breath. This actually happened. The man was from the Tarahumara tribe, who lived deep in the rugged, rocky, sun-scorched mountains of Mexico. They call themselves the Ramuri, and their physical endurance completely baffled scientists until they looked a little closer. When researchers analyzed their muscles and their strides, they found the secret. They just don't run like we do. They use a forefoot strike rather than landing heavily on their heels. This unique stride absorbs the shock in their joints 3 times more effectively. But the real showstopper? During these massive 200-kilometer treks through the mountains, their heart rate remains exactly the same as if they were just sitting at home drinking a cup of tea. Their bodies have adapted to make extreme ultra-distance running completely effortless. So let's shift gears from the blazing desert to the freezing peaks of Mount Everest, 8,800 meters up in the sky. At the summit, oxygen drops by a terrifying 2/3. If you or I went up there unprepared, our lungs would immediately contract, our brains would start hallucinating, and our hearts would race in this desperate fight for survival. Yet the Sherpa people climb this peak like it's a casual Sunday stroll. Some of them have summited over 20 times, entirely without oxygen tanks. When scientists tested Sherpa blood, they fully expected to find clumped red blood cells, struggling to carry whatever oxygen they could find. Instead, they found nothing of the sort. The Sherpa body is quite literally designed to burn oxygen with a miraculous efficiency. They have this internal mechanism that uses the exact same amount of fuel as us, but produces phenomenal energy, and this brilliantly illustrates the power of genetics. They possess a unique mutation of the EPAS1 gene, which is found nowhere else in modern humans. They inherited this extraordinary biological code from the Denisovans, a human group that vanished 40,000 years ago, and it literally still flows in their veins today.
It's simply staggering to look at these adaptations side by side. From the Bajals' 50% larger spleens for the ocean depths, to the Tarahumaras' shock-absorbing mechanics in the harsh deserts, all the way to the Sherpa's ancient altitude gene. It just shows us how radically and wonderfully the human body can mutate and adapt to conquer literally any extreme environment on the planet.
Part 2. Beyond Normal Perception.
Okay, so we've explored the physical body, but the adaptations definitely don't stop from the neck down. Let's look at sensory perception and the incredible power of the human brain. Imagine standing out in a massive savanna, looking up and being able to perfectly identify a specific bird and exactly what it's doing from 2 kilometers away. Or imagine standing in pitch-black darkness and seeing predators move around you as if you were wearing military-grade night vision goggles. For the Maasai warriors of Kenya and Tanzania, this is totally normal. Their vision is verified to be a stunning 3 times sharper than the average human being.
But here's the incredible twist. Doctors examined the Maasai, fully expecting to find some bizarre anatomical mutation in their eyes. I don't know, a super lens or a strange retina, right? But they found absolutely nothing. Their eyes are anatomically identical to ours. The secret wasn't in the eye at all. It was in the brain. Generations of living in vast plains, staring at the distant horizon to protect cattle and hunt lions, basically forced their brains to develop lightning-fast, highly sophisticated image processing. The hardware is exactly the same, but they have massively upgraded the software.
And this connection between the brain and reality gets even deeper when we look at the Himba tribe in the arid deserts of Namibia. In their language, they actually have absolutely no word for the color blue. To them, the sky and the trees are categorized under the exact same color family. Scientists initially thought they might just be colorblind, so they showed them a circle of green squares. One square was a microscopic, almost invisible shade different. European volunteers stared at it and just saw identical green squares. But the Himba? They pointed out the different square instantly.
This is a perfect real-world example of linguistic relativity. Because the Himba language lacks a word for blue but hypercategorizes different shades of green, their brains physically cannot ignore subtle visual details in nature that our brains just filter right out. Their language literally shaped their physical perception. They see a reality that is completely invisible to you and me.
Part 3. Mind, Language, and Space. If language can dictate what colors we can and cannot see, what else can it control? Let's take this a step further and see how language governs our innate sense of space and time itself. The Aboriginal Australians represent the oldest living continuous civilization on Earth, dating back 65,000 years. If you dropped an average person in the middle of a featureless, sprawling desert without a map, GPS, or even stars, they'd be hopelessly lost in minutes. Yet the Aboriginal peoples navigate these terrifying desert labyrinths spanning thousands of miles with absolute pinpoint precision.
So how on earth do they do it? It comes back to language. In their native tongue, there are no relative directional words like left or right. Everything, and I mean everything, is spoken in absolute cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. Because they have to constantly orient themselves just to speak a proper sentence, their minds instinctively point to true north. Scientists have found that even if you lock them in a pitch-black, hermetically sealed room, their internal compass automatically knows exactly which way north is without a single conscious thought.
Which brings us to a really fascinating climax for this explainer. We've seen language bend color, we've seen it bend space, but what about time? Deep in the Amazon rainforest lives the Piraha tribe. When linguists studied them, they discovered something truly profound. Their language is entirely asynchronous. It has absolutely zero grammar for time. There is no past tense, there is no future tense. Every single sentence is spoken entirely in the present.
Think about what that actually means for a second. What happens when your mind literally cannot conceptualize tomorrow's anxieties or yesterday's regrets? Well, science has the answer. When researchers measured the cortisol, that's the stress hormone, in the Piraha people, they found the lowest levels ever recorded in human history. They don't fear the future because it simply doesn't exist in their vocabulary. They don't regret the past because it doesn't exist in their minds. They are, scientifically speaking, the least stressed, happiest people on Earth.
Which leaves us with a pretty profound and provocative thought to wrap up today. Maybe the modern epidemic of anxiety and stress isn't a flaw in human biology at all. Maybe, just maybe, it's simply the price of a civilization and a language that trained us to live in a time that is not our own. It really makes you wonder what other incredible potential is lying dormant inside you, just waiting to be unlocked. Thank you so much for diving into these amazing discoveries with me today in this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.